Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the words of the Horowitz. Today is a new mitzvah, loisaseh, negative commandment, kuf lamed gimel, number 133. Shaloi lavai al kedesha. A man should not have intimate relations with a kedesha. We'll see what that means. Baloi kedushin, without getting betrothed and having a consummation or a consecration of the marriage. So says the Horowitz Shenemar, it says in the Parsha, I believe it might even be this week's Parsha, Loisiyeh Kedeshim and B'nais Yisrael. There should not be a Kedesha amongst the daughters of Israel. Kedesha, what is a Kedesha? Hi pinuya shehifkira atzma liznus. It's referring to a woman who is not married, and she's mafkir, she gives herself up, liznus, to have illicit relations. So it's basically a single woman who ends up going around and giving herself up to other men to have intimate relations with men that are not her husband, not intending to be her husband, not making a ma'isa, an act of kiddushin or erisin over here, and therefore she's nothing more than a zaina, than what we would call a harlot, a woman who is not married, who goes and has relations out of wedlock with another man, is called, in the language of the Torah, a zaina. She's called a harlot. Or even worse, perhaps, the father gives his daughter over for the sake of relations, intimate relations with another man, but she was not given over for the sake of getting married to him. Or the father, even worse, he just gives his daughter up for the sake of znus, of being a zaina, of being a harlot. So, however you look at it, says the Horowitz, you have a woman over here who is a single woman, and she's having intimate relations which are reserved for a husband and for a wife. That is the way that the Torah looks at the connection between a man and a woman. Yes, the Torah acknowledges that there are sexual desires between a man and a woman, and the Torah acknowledges that the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world is that the union of a man and a woman, with Hashem's help, it yields children and a family. That's the reason that we are getting married. And the union of a man and a woman is for marriage and marriage alone. A man and a woman that end up having intimate relations out of wedlock, so the woman herself gets the category of a kedesha, which the Horowitz is defining as a zaina, as a harlot. That is not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. Puk Chazi, take a look at the world today that we are living in. There are harlots running all around the world. That's what's happening today. People are pushing off marriage till 30s, 40s, 50 years old. People are running around and having intimate relations one with the other, out of wedlock, with no intention of marriage, so on and so forth. So we live in a world of harlotry. That is the world that we are living in today, and the Torah is looking down on this because that's not the purpose of a man and a woman coming together. They're supposed to be ish ve'isha, a husband and a wife, who are unifying as one with the intention of bringing children into this world to be able to build a family that is going to fill the world up with more people that will serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Horowitz V'habal isha kedesha, a man who ends up transgressing this, and he ends up having a harlocious relation with this woman, l'shem znus, he did it for the sake of illicit relations, baloi kiddushin, there's no kiddushin, there's no engagement, there's no marriage that is taking place over here. Oivrim shnehem alav zeh, both the man and the woman who submits herself to these relations, they both transgress this negative commandment. And this is something that exists everywhere, ubechol zman, all of the time. And unfortunately, as we mentioned before, we live in a world that has made this prohibition something that is almost non-existent. It's well accepted in the world right now. It's well accepted that men and women do not get married, and yet they have the most intimate of relations with each other, which makes the woman a zaina, and is nothing less than harlotry. And the world is pushing the agenda that all of this is okay, but the Torah is saying it's not okay. The Torah is telling us that for Klal Yisrael, we are in a different level. We're a level of Kedusha, we're a level of Tahara, where our intimacy is reserved for our wives and our wives alone. And women's intimacy is reserved for their husbands and their husbands alone. And if, God forbid, it ends up being in any other way, so then it's znus, it's harlotry, and it is condoned by the Torah, and both the man and the women both transgress this negative prohibition, and this is something that exists everywhere all the time, in Chutz La'aretz, in Eretz Yisrael. When there's a Beis HaMikdash, when there's not a Beis HaMikdash, men and women must be careful to make sure that they don't misbehave in the eyes of the Torah, which of course is the eyes of Hashem. Have a wonderful day.